Hello, my friends. Today we're showcasing the modern countries of Central Africa and looking specifically at their capital cities. Now, originally, I planned to do a gigantic video covering every single country in Africa all in one go, but I decided it'll be a lot more practical for me to split it up into regions. So this will be a modern African series of sorts, which will eventually also cover North, East, West, and South Africa as well. Normally on the Red Spirit Mass channel, we usually talk about more historical and traditional types of cultures in Africa, but the reason I wanted to talk a bit more about modern Africa is because I had a conversation with one of my fellow Americans recently, and holy shit, my friends, some Americans' ignorance is off the charts. This person quite literally did not think there was cities in Africa. And of course, not only do they have cities now, but they had cities in the past as well. So during these videos, we'll highlight interesting facts about each country, and although we'll mostly be sticking to positive facts, I don't intend for these videos to be some kind of tour guide thing. So we won't be pretending like the world is all sunshine and rainbows. So yeah, not every fact will be a fun fact, but they will all be educational. Let us begin in Luanda, the capital city of Angola. This wealthy city is host to an event called the Biennale of Luanda, a Pan-African forum for the culture of peace. This event aims to bring African countries together to promote peace and by encouraging cultural exchanges in Africa of both arts and sciences as well as dialogue between generations. The Biennale of Luanda was a collaborative creation of the Republic of Angola, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, aka UNESCO, and the African Union. The event takes place every 2 years. The first one happened in 2019. It was a celebration of the diversity of African values, beliefs, spiritual practices, knowledge, and traditions that promote respect for human rights, cultural diversity, the rejection of violence, and the advancement of democratic societies. The second Biennale took place in 2021 with the theme of Arts, Culture, and Heritage, Levers for Building the Africa We Want. And the most recent event in 2023 focused on education and the culture of peace and African citizenship as tools for the sustainable development of the continent. Now that we've covered the southernmost extent of Central Africa, let's look at the northernmost country in Central Africa. And that country, of course, is none other than Chad. And the city we're looking at is its capital, N'Djamena. The buildings that are the stars of this photo are the National Museum and National Library. I was able to find much more info about the museum than the library, so our fun fact will focus on that. The National Museum was established in 1962, 2 years after the country of Chad became independent from France. During the foundation of the museum, the curator and the devoted staff organized the museum into 4 rooms which were dedicated to prehistory, proto-history, archives, and folk arts, crafts, and traditions. Now that we're done with Chad, let's move on to their neighbor, Cameroon. Yes, I know some people consider Cameroon part of West Africa, but for various reasons, I consider Cameroon, and many other people consider Cameroon, part of Central Africa. The city of Yaoundé in Cameroon has the unique distinction of being home to one of Africa's first video game companies. Kororo Games was founded in 2012 and produced its first game, Orion Legacy of the Kori Odin, on April 14, 2016. Not only is it a game made in Africa, but it's also one of the first games to ever be themed around African culture. In future videos on my channel, I plan to showcase this game in a lot more depth. I've already played some of the game myself, but I haven't had a chance to complete it yet, so it might be a while before those videos on Koryodan come out. Just east of Cameroon, we can find the Central African Republic, and its capital is Bangui. When searching for photos for this particular capital, I came across some old photos from the 1960s, and I thought it'd be a good idea to show these images because it demonstrates that Africa didn't just start modernizing, it's been using modern methods of constructions for a long time. It's also worth noting that the Central African Republic, like many other African countries, is rich in mineral wealth. Unfortunately, though, this mineral wealth kinda acts as a curse. And so the nation is actually one of the poorest countries in the world. And the reason why is because that great mineral wealth is exploited by the West. Hopefully, one day we'll put an end to neocolonialism, but in the meantime, life goes on. So here's a fun fact about the nation. A traditional sport enjoyed by many in the country is canoe racing. During this event, the government gives 50,000 francs to all the teams that participate, which is about $85, and the winner of the contest share 1 million francs, which is equal to $1,690. Now, of course, I know that American athletes get paid way more than that, but keep in mind, in a poor country like the Central African Republic, $1,690 is a lot of money. And quite frankly, I'm pretty poor myself, so $1,690 sounds pretty sweet to me. I could buy a lot of African books with that kind of money. Anyway, let's now move on to one of the tiny African nations, that being Equatorial Guinea. Unlike most of the country, the capital of Equatorial Guinea is located on an island named Bioko. The capital city on this island is named Malabo. In fact, there are 5 islands that are part of the country. Besides Bioko, there is Corsico, Anambon, Elobe Grande, and Elobe Chico. Unfortunately, income inequality is a huge issue in this country, and the corrupt government hoards its wealth rather than investing it in important things like health and education. Well, that's depressing. However, there is some confusing but good news. Despite the fact that, according to the World Bank, families have little money to pay for school or related expenses like school supplies, transportation, and etc., despite high repetition rates of grades and high dropout rates, and despite UNICEF's report that learning outcomes are still below West and Central African standards, as only 8% of preschool and 51% of primary school teachers have formal training, somehow, by some miracle, Equatorial Guinea has a very high literacy rate of 95.3%. For comparison, South Africa's literacy rate is 95%, China is 96.8%, Mexico is 95.2%, and Portugal is 95.9%. These stats, by the way, were found on the CIA's website, but for some reason, America's and some other countries' literacy rates aren't listed there. And so, of course, I had to find out what America's stats were. According to the U.S. Department of Education, 79% of American adults have what they call Level 1 English literacy skills. Now, despite what I've said about my fellow Americans, that's actually quite lower than what I expected. Though it's worth noting that stat is specifically about English, and we are a nation of immigrants, many of whom don't speak English, so that's probably the reason. Anyway, the point is, even though Equatorial Guinea has a lot of problems, the people's reading and writing skills are just as good, if not better, than many other countries. It's time to talk about Gabon. Gabon's level of urbanization is among the highest on the continent, with over 80% of its population living in urban areas. The capital city Libreville and the city Port-Gentil together are home to almost 59% of the entire population. Young people make up a majority of Gabon's demographics, and half of the population is under 20 years old. Gabon is also an ecological pioneer. Protection of the country's tropical forest is a high priority, and because of that, Gabon is a net carbon absorber. Only 8 countries in the world can claim to have net zero emissions, and Gabon is one of them. And whether some people want to admit it or not, other than the constant threat of nuclear annihilation, climate change is the biggest threat to humanity. So the people of Gabon are quite literally heroes. By the way, there are 2 other African countries that share this honor with Gabon, and those include Comoros and Madagascar, which you can learn more about in a previous video of mine. Last but not least, let's talk about the Congos. Yes, that's right, I said Congos, plural, because if you didn't know, there are 2 Congos. Congo-Brazzaville is the smaller of the 2 Congos, and since it is smaller, it's also less diverse. But don't worry, it still has plenty of cool cultures, like the Teke. Look at that mask, it rocks my socks. But anyway, I guess I'm supposed to be more focused on modern fun facts, so let's get into it. What you're looking at here is an office skyscraper named the Nabemba Tower. Standing at 106 meters and 30 floors, it is the tallest building in the country and in Central Africa in general. The name of this building is derived from Mount Nabemba, which is the 2nd highest mountain in the nation. Finally, let's travel to our last city of the video, which is right across the river and that is Congo-Kinshasa. That's right, Congo-Kinshasa and Congo-Brazzaville are right next to each other. Not only is Congo-Kinshasa one of the largest cities in Africa, but it's also in one of the largest countries as well. Kinshasa is so big that it has more French-speaking citizens than Paris, France, and French is only one of many languages spoken in the Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo arguably has suffered the most under both historical colonialism and neo-colonialism, but the Congolese people remain tenacious and resilient. Their strength and determination shine through in various aspects of life. In Kinshasa, for example, the capital has seen a flourishing cultural scene including musical performances like the Pan-African Musical Festival and art festivals like the Kinact Festival, which attract international attention. The Democratic Republic of Congo is also home to a number of innovative tech companies like Nuru, formerly known as Kivu Green Energy, which is a company that specializes in solar energy and provides electricity to multiple parts of the country. Alrighty, so today we've gone over both positive and negative facts about the countries of Central Africa. Some of the stuff I already knew before making this video series, but some things were new to me as well. The fact that 3 African countries have net zero carbon emissions was a great surprise, and hopefully my country and others can follow the example of Gabon in the fight against climate change. Did any of today's facts surprise you? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching.